This is PTC Creo, How to Model Almost Anything, Exercise 5. So the main point of this exercise, if you just kind of flip through here, is they are looking at sub-assemblies and product models. So what they're doing is they're assuming that you have a bunch of CAD files, like for example the car body, the wheels, the hubs, the motors, etc. You have done that. You've split up into groups and you've made each individual file. Now, once you have these small files, essentially what do you do? And that's what the focus of this is. And so it talks about how to go through, set your constraints, put all your pieces together, and then you just basically continue to create more and more complex assemblies. And essentially that's what it is. So the first thing you're going to do is actually create a new assembly within the car folder. So you need to set your working directory, how to model almost anything, and the car. And then you're going to create a new assembly. And so the first one I believe that they want you to do is wheel subsystem. So wheel subsystem exists because I've been working with this already. And so you start with a blank slate, and you don't really need to see any of your datums. And essentially you're going to assemble, and the first thing you assemble is the wheel. You want to make sure that that is in the center of your workspace. So this is your wheel, and you're going to assemble basically the tire with that wheel. And so what you're going to need to do is set those constraints. So when you're doing this, you essentially want to focus on the images, right? And so you can see that it says align these edges and align there, and that's almost identical to what we have. And you can actually, instead of reading through this, you can kind of see what they're looking for. And so they're looking for a constraint here to the outer rim, and then after that it aligns, and they want this surface to the surface of the wheel so that the wheel sits inside. And as you can see from the image, both are coincident. And that's what we're looking for. So you're going to take your model, set the inside hub to the outside so it aligns. Now if you look, one of the text is talking about it mentions degrees of freedom. If you notice, our way to manipulate this tire has actually been reduced. So now we only have 2 degrees of freedom where we're allowed to slide in this dimension, or essentially this dimension. And so we grayed out. As soon as we set the constraint, this piece now is restricted in movement. So it's looking for you to go ahead and continue with this. So we want something like this surface, and then this surface. And so you're going to have your wheel. Both are coincident. And again, the user-defined status, you can keep this consistent because this whole system should operate together. So it's just locked in together. Click OK, and that is our wheel. And it wants us to save, basically. And so now we have that assembly saved. Your save. Okay. And then basically you just continue. So that's your first sub-assembly. You continue doing this. Now you make an axle subsystem. And you kind of get more and more complex as they go. So file, we're going to make a new assembly, axle subsystem. Click OK. Probably spelled axle wrong. That's fine, doesn't really matter. And as you can see, you're going to load in the axle, which is great, and then you're going to import your wheel subsystem, which you just made, and you're going to set up the axle system. So you're going to put a wheel on both sides. So let's try to do that. So we're going to assemble, and then that is the axle. open. We want this thing in the middle. Click OK. And we want to basically assemble our wheel subsystem, which I call wheel subsystem 1. And we want to put this on here. Now we want essentially the inside of the wheel to be aligned with the outside here. Now remember, if this happens, you can easily remedy this obviously. If we want to put the wheel on this end, we have an issue where it's going the wrong way. Remember that you can always, with placement, you can always flip it. So it's going the opposite way, and that's all well and good. This is actually a good mistake. I actually double-clicked mouse 3 there by accident, and now my definitions are gone. And you might think, oh, well, now I have to put everything back in, and delete what I just did, and undo it. But you can actually go back into, so here's our parts here. We can go back in and essentially edit our definitions and get back to where we were and go back to placement. And that's actually a pretty handy thing instead of deleting and redoing, because it could get pretty frustrating pretty fast if you continue to make some of the same mistakes. So we want to essentially, did I just misclick again? I think I did. What is this definition? This definition is that one. What is this one? This with that. So that's not actually what I want. I don't want that. This is what I don't want. So you can go in here in placement. You can edit some of the things if you do make mistakes. I can actually just, so I have the end of the piece there, and I continue to make mistakes. As you can see, this can get frustrating quickly, and I keep clicking incorrectly. But again, you can go in and just edit your definition and get back to where you were. So we want this, and this one is not quite what we're looking for, because that means that it's aligned there, and what we really want is we want it aligned with the outside there. So if we actually axle surface there, tire surface there. So we should remove this. We do not want the tire surface. There we go. Okay, so we want that end, and we essentially want it all the way in there, which is adjacent to that. Finally, now we have the axle all the way in. Okay. So click accept, and you finally, or I have finally done it. And that's one tire. Do it again for another tire. Hopefully this time I won't make as many mistakes. I open a tire. There's a mistake already. We actually want to open our wheel subsystem. That's what we're actually looking for, not just the tire. So again, outside of the axle to inside of the tire, and fit our zoom again, and we want the edge of this to essentially there. Okay, and it's good. We don't need to flip it. It's all set. There you go. And so this is now our axle subsystem, and let me just save that. Actually correct the spelling. Please save. Apparently it's saved to a folder, so it doesn't look like I can actually change it. Well, it's fine. So you have your axle subsystem, and you're going to continue in this method, and you're going to go through. Now, some of the things to pay attention to are, you can kind of just get the gist of it from the diagrams. Pay attention if any of the pictures have menus, so that you can see if anything is different. So one of the things that's different is when you put the axle inside the chassis, you need to use a pin, user-defined basically constraint so that the axle can spin and the car can move. And it talks about doing offsets. I think that the offset value is actually incorrect. I think it's actually 0.1. When I was going through, that seemed to put the wheels more in center. You can play with that value if you like. But basically it's going through the same thing. Create a new assembly, assemble a couple more parts, put them together, put them in the middle, and you're going to have all of these situations again. New assembly, new part, pull in the more complicated assembly, put it in the middle, put a new thing in there, insert the motor basically, and move through. And so this whole thing is actually, I think it's probably easier instead of the video where you might have to pause and then try it, pause and try it. It's actually easier for this to go through the images and just see what you're doing. More so than anything, there's no real new techniques, it's just a little repetitive. So feel free to go ahead and do that now, and then remember that you have your review questions and then you have your screenshots for your challenge.